Alright, so we got Malta Besieged on the table. We're in the middle epic, and right after the Battle of Cape Matapan, I was able to use Ultra Intel to look into the future and saw Operation Tiger is coming up. So we're going to go ahead and do the headline phase here. That would be Operation Tiger. The red stripe across the top tells us that this is a convoy action. I know that might be hard to see due to the lighting in my camera, but there is a red stripe. I can tell in my lighting. Red stripe across the gray background. We get 3 actions with this. Only the Regia Aeronautica is going to move. 1 military and 1 supply point are at stake and could arrive if the convoy arrives undamaged. As far as resources, we're not going to get or lose anything beyond that. And we have a few orders to carry out as well on this particular card. Now, before we start resolving it, just a quick sit rep on the situation. The early phase was really touch and go. At one point, I only had 1 military, 1 supply, 1 morale on the resources. So that's big time danger. I think both the Air Force and the Navy for Italy attempted to make entries into Malta, which is why I've got it fortified to the hilt. Somehow we managed to weather that storm. But the Africa Corps has bypassed Tobruk, rolled a 6 for when they moved into the fortified space. So they are threatening to break through to Cairo. But as long as they're in a bypass situation, I do get a +1 modifier to raid. So a 4 or better. Normally it's a 5 or 6 to successfully raid. You have to roll higher than that number. With the +1, that means a 4 or better would cause a raid to be successful. And what that does is it pushes Rommel's situation towards the right. This is a die roll modifier for attacks on the Africa Corps. So right now, a 3 or better would force him back to the Tobruk space. And I'd have to move, if I'm doing this correctly, I believe I have to do a second attack to force him out. Otherwise, he would reduce the fort at the end of the turn. However, every time you successfully attack him, this slides this way. Then I would need a 4 or better. So I need a 3 or better, a 4 or better, and then the marker would be here when he reaches Benghazi. So this kind of demonstrates the ebb and flow of the North Africa campaign that's going on in the backdrop of my Siege of Malta. So that's the situation right now. I also get a free raid die roll as a bonus for having 5 military points on my resources tracks here. So let's go ahead and carry out these orders. The first thing we're going to do is take the Regia Aeronautica and we're going to advance them to the next box here. That's the only one of the fronts that moves. We're going to flip all of the fronts except Africa Corps over. And we're going to make die rolls on each of these tracks. There's no U-boats on the tracks yet, so we're going to take one of our dice. We'll roll for this one first. Now, before we do this, I should check to see if there's any red numbers. And there are none of them. Okay, if there's any red numbers, like this space has a red 6, it might be worthwhile to use Ultra to escort the convoy. That would invalidate any die rolls falling within the critical hit bandwidth of the die roll spectrum there. So we're going to roll for the Regia Aeronautica, and the die roll is a 1, so no hit. We'll flip him over to show he's done. We'll go ahead and do the other Italians. A 5 or 6 would be a hit. And again, we rolled a 1, so no hits there. We're off to a great start. And a 4 to 6 would be a hit for the Luftwaffe. And they rolled a 3. So no hits. That is perfect. So we're going to get both the supply point and the military point. Now, can't get another military point, but the supply point will be helpful. So that is the result of that. Now, if I had any hits, I would put them on here, but we wait until the very end of the turn during the housekeeping phase to resolve that, and we do so by putting the markers. We'll put markers on both of these spaces, and we roll a die for every hit that was scored against the convoy. And if it falls in this bandwidth, we'd lose that supply point. If it fell in here, we would lose the military point. So really, there was only a 1 in 6 chance of me losing the one that I really wanted. So that was basically a pretty favorable outcome, but there wasn't a whole lot at stake with this particular convoy. So that is how convoys work in the game. Now that that's done, we'll go ahead and take care of the rest of this. We don't get any resources. We get a +1 to military, Luftwaffe, Regia Aeronautica, and Raid. So let's put these markers down on the board. So we'll add this to military, which isn't going to really affect anything. The Luftwaffe, we'll put one on him. Regia Aeronautica, and Raid. So this will also stack with the situation where Tobruk has been bypassed. So a +1, +1. So a 3 or better would be a successful raid. So we have 3 actions, and here's what I propose. I'm going to take our dice. I have my custom World War II dice. I got all these British dice here. And so we got 3 dice to use, 3 actions. I propose we go ahead and roll against the Africa Corps using our +1 advantage. Now, I'm going to go ahead and use Ultra. So I'm going to roll a die. I'll use my extra dice here. I'm going to roll a die. As long as I don't roll a 1, I'm okay. So we're going to go ahead and roll a die here. And I had a bad feeling about that. I rolled a 1. So Ultra counterintelligence got him, and so Ultra's gone for the turn. Now I can get him back immediately by spending on one of my actions, but I'm not going to do that. I am going to go ahead, however, and attack the Africa Corps, and we have a +2 modifier. What I was attempting to do was add a +1 with Ultra, so that would have been a +3 against the Africa Corps. And I rolled a 1 again. The dice are stuck on 1s. I'm going to do it again. All right, there's a 5. That's a success. We force him back. Rommel's situation improves somewhat. Down to my last action, however. I'm going to use my bonus here to do the free raid. We get +1, +1 to my raid die. And we rolled another 5. So that will go ahead and move this up. All right. Then I'm going to use my final action from the card here. Remember, the first attack was a failure, the second was a success. I used the freebie to get, or the freebie from here to get the raid to give me maximum die roll modifiers, and we'll hit it again. And we're glad we did that, because with 3, 4, 5 is just enough to force him back. Now, Tobruk is no longer bypassed. It can only be bypassed again if, when they go to advance, they have to roll a 4 in order to successfully enter this space. You have to roll higher than a 3. A 6 means you bypass it. So Tobruk is in a very, very strong position right now. So Africa Corps has been forced back, and that improves Rommel's situation just a little bit. Now, if he does capture Tobruk, then one of the effects of that is also to push this one direction towards Rommel's favor, making it harder for me to attack him in the future. And so that is the end of that. Now, if I hadn't succeeded on that die roll, I would have kept going. I would have used my supply points. You can always spend a supply point for an extra action. But be careful with that, because if these reach 0, -1 die roll modifier to all attacks. And in order to get this up, you'd have to roll a 4 or better and spend an action. So not everything went my way this turn, but enough went my way that I feel like I'm happy with the outcome. So what I'll go ahead and do now is go to the housekeeping phase. We're going to get both our supply point and our military point from the arrival of the convoy. Remember, they had scored no hits on them, and I can't get anything for the military point because we're already maxed out. I leave these markers in place for now, and I get a free bonus action. Now, I can use it to improve my morale with a +1 die roll modifier, or I can do another action using existing modifiers that the cards supply. I'm going to go ahead and use it to attack the Regia Aeronautica because, you know what? Check that. Let's try to move the Luftwaffe back because that's a +1 on him, and he's kind of hard to move. And we rolled a 3, which becomes a 4, and it's not quite enough to get her done. So now at that point, we're done. We clean up. We remove all of the die roll modifier markers from the board. Take our card, discard it, and we are done for the turn. If Ultra had been not a failure from counterintelligence, if it had simply been used, we would mark it as ready to go again on this turn. I think that I forgot to move that from the last convoy. And there we go. That is how a convoy works in Malta Besieged.